To be jumping for joy, Elon Musk style, over the fact that you were successful in further disadvantaging the most vulnerable minority group on this planet is diabolical, to say the least.
It's definitive outside the Supreme Court. Men are men, women are women, trans women are not women, not just on paper, but in law.
So clearly, this is a reaction from the people who were for the Supreme Court ruling, which intended to redefine what the term woman was in regard to the Equality Act in the United Kingdom. And they determined that trans women are not women. But my question to them would be, what did you solve? Okay, you were successful in getting a handful of trans women out of your sports, a handful of trans women out of your bathrooms, a handful of trans women out of your locker rooms, but you don't see advocacy on the gender critical side for the little girls in Africa who are getting their genitals mutilated every day. You guys want to punch down on the group that is disproportionately and most affected by the patriarchy. Trans people. Trans women specifically. I'm going to continue to shout this from the rooftops. The gender critical movement is comprised of a bunch of privileged white women who live in the West and a few indoctrinated black women who like to tokenize the plight of black and brown women around the world to fit whatever agenda they are trying to push. They are not actively fighting like real patriarchy, y'all. They do not care about these little girls in Africa. Furthermore, the anti-trans movement is not the modern day suffragette movement. I actually think that it's very offensive to try to equate being a bigot and a transphobe to like actual systemic oppression of women. And baby, I thought y'all said that women weren't oppressed in Western society. But the 1% that's literally at the bottom of the barrel because we are is able to have some type of political, economic, and social power over you. Make it make sense. It's so performative.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Europe, specifically the UK, because their Supreme Court has issued a bombshell ruling that has the woke revolutionaries and the woke activists upset, right? They're boohoo, whining, and crying because the Supreme Court has legally defined what a woman is.
It breaks my heart to wake up every day thinking that when I grew up in rural Devon and I didn't see queer people surrounded me in the adults and in the community, I felt so isolated, and the only thing I associated with transness was fear and danger, and like having our identities constantly questioned just makes me so entirely worried for the young trans people who already feel alone.
And do you think this makes it easier to question your existence?
Yeah, and
because
just
there's a
feel
legal legitimacy to it now.
Yeah, and it's when it's a headline and it's you see these women who are proclaimed feminists celebrating that we are being not protected by law. How is that going to make a young trans woman feel who's already terrified and confused?
Transgender women will now be searched by male police officers according to the British Transport Police. I wonder if this makes biological females any safer somehow. For all the people yesterday who were saying that the Supreme Court ruling doesn't really change much, it just clarifies things, everyone's still protected under the Equality Act, how are transgender women who have been transgender, many of them for literal decades, who have done everything with their body to transform it, how are they any safer being stopped and searched and being searched while in custody by male officers, while there are 1,000 male officers right now in England and Wales who are...
Like, if we were to do a status check of where society is at right now, currently, trans women can't freely use a women's only gym. They can't freely use the bathrooms that they'd like to use, right? That's where trans women are at. Meanwhile, we have a rapist for a president. Like, who's on top there? Who's winning? Yeah? And what's so infuriating is that it takes, on average, a woman 8 to 10 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. But you used your energy into campaigning that trans women are ruled legally not women. And you thought you ate. You thought you did your big one. Yeah, you feel like I've protected women. I'm a hero. Because also, okay, now it's been done. See, UK Supreme Court have ruled that. Now what? Look around, babe. Has anything changed? Yeah? Do you feel freer? Do you feel safer? Yeah? Are you getting paid the same now? Have women stopped dying at the hands of men? Nothing has changed. Nothing at all. And that's because trans women were actually never the problem. Of course they weren't. The problem has always been men. But you let them fool you. And how does that feel?
shit! You're killing trans kids!
I don't care too much about being recognised as a woman because I just don't want to be recognised at all. I just want to be left alone, and I think that's what we all want after this war against our tiny community where we are less than 1% of the population, and it's been a constant onslaught against us, and we just want to be left alone. I think it's going to affect a lot more people than just trans people's lives, and that's actually what I'm looking forward to, because I think when people realise that it's going to be butch lesbians being asked why they're in women's bathrooms, because that's already happening. I have many friends who have been stopped in bathrooms who are just cisgender, born women, lesbians.
Trans rights! When do we want it? Now! When do we want trans rights? When do we want it? Now! Trans rights! Now!
Okay, and unfortunately for the woke activists, the Supreme Court basically is saying that trans women are not women, right? You're not women. And yes, that has an effect on whether or not trans women will be able to participate in women's sports, will they be allowed in women's spaces, etc. And now, again, the woke activists are upset. And I want to react to it because, you know, this really should not be news in 2025. I mean, I think we all kind of had this question settled up until recently, right? For all of human history, we knew the difference between men and women, but now all of a sudden we don't, right? So let's go ahead and react to what happened out in the UK.
Unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
A pivotal moment in a landmark case. Joy and relief from campaigners in Edinburgh and outside the Supreme Court in London too. They've won their battle over the legal definition of what a woman is.
We counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not.
But it is a significant defeat for the Scottish Government, who argued transgender people with a gender recognition certificate should have the same sex-based protections as biological women. A ruling which could place greater restrictions on trans people in Scotland, England and Wales.
It means that women's spaces are finally secure. We can restore that in our public sector organisations, so all hospital wards, all changing rooms, they will all be women only.
I can't be any more delighted. She's in tears. It's brilliant news. Lesbians can actually have places of their own.
The noise around gender identity in Scotland has been deafening in the wake of Nicola Sturgeon's attempts to push forward reforms before she stepped down as First Minister.
Do you think this ruling puts this fierce debate in Scotland to bed?
No, because the people that were arguing the other way feel as passionately as we do.
At these London celebrations, though, a note of dissent.
Trans rights are human rights. For now!
The Equality Act still gives transgender people protection against discrimination, but there is concern in the community about what comes next.
I'm absolutely gutted by today's ruling. I think it undoes 20 years of understanding that if a transgender person with a gender recognition certificate has obtained that GRC, that they are, for almost all legal intents and purposes, their acquired gender. It feels like the UK is an increasingly scary place to be openly trans, and I think that this ruling is only going to make that worse.
I just remind the House that the Right Honourable Gentleman struggled to define what a woman was.
For years, it has been an uncomfortable issue for Keir Starmer and his party. The government welcomed today's ruling.
I think what it does do is give clarity to women and service providers. And obviously, more widely, single-sex spaces are protected in the law, and they will remain protected under this government.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, you get the gist of kind of what's happening here, right? again, I don't understand why is it that in 2025 this is an issue, right? Why do you need a Supreme Court to rule on something that, again, we have known throughout all of human history, right? But again, you have to, because the woke activists essentially have gained so much power that as a society, this is an issue that we have to revisit, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a win for women, right? And I like the fact that you have women like J.K. Rowling that has held it down, okay? Held it down for years now, despite the fact that she has gotten a whole lot of backlash from the radicals over this issue. And, hey, she stood by what she believed. And, again, you're starting to see some progress on this issue, right? You're starting to see us actually get back to common sense when it comes to this stuff. And this is great because I don't really have anything positive to report out of the UK or Europe on the social front, right? But this is definitely positive news. So let's continue with some of these reactions.
Just for the sake of clarity, let's just remind ourselves of what Keir Starmer said about women.
Women can have a penis.
Look, I don't think we can conduct this debate with,
Sorry, have I offended you in something?
No, it's just...
Okay, there we go. Now, I am at pains to stress that he later changed his mind somewhat and decided that most women are adult human females. But
yeah, honestly, I don't understand how you can make somebody a leader, right, within a party or the leader of a country who can't define what a biological woman is, right? I mean, that is like my litmus test for any politician at this point, right? If you can't define what a biological woman is, if you clearly can't see reality, then there's an issue, right? You're not somebody I could vote for. You're not somebody I could trust as a leader to lead a country, okay? Because again, if you can't get basic questions about reality right, okay, then yeah, I have to call into question your judgment. Now, in the United States of America, our Supreme Court is probably going to have to deal with this same question sooner rather than later, because you have some states like Maine and their woke governor refusing to comply with President Trump and their DOJ on the ban on biological boys competing against biological girls in sports. Now, of course, the mainstream liberal media frames this as a ban on transgender athletes, which is just ridiculous. Okay, this is like just how much propaganda is in our media, right? They're framing this as a ban on transgender athletes when that's not what's happening. But anyways, President Trump is saying, listen, we're defunding states that don't comply, right? We're going to take away your funds. The Maine governor has decided she's not going to comply. So now there's going to be a big legal battle over this. And again, it's probably going to reach the Supreme Court, and we will be visiting this question sooner rather than later.
This just in, Attorney General Pam Bondi suing the state of Maine over refusing to comply with a ban on trans athletes in high school sports. CNN's Paula Reed has all the details and is just coming in now at the Justice Department for us. Paula, what did the Attorney General say and what happens now?
Well, of course, this follows that high-profile confrontation between Maine's governor and President Trump earlier this year, where the governor made it clear she did not intend to comply with his executive order banning transgender athletes from girls' sports. And she said, "See you in court." Well, now that is a reality, but this also seemed like the natural next step in this ongoing controversy, because shortly after that confrontation in the White House, the state of Maine faced a barrage of federal retaliation. Multiple agencies, including the Department of Agriculture, Health and Human Services, the Department of Education, and the Department of Justice, threatened federal funding. The Attorney General back in February sent Maine a letter saying that it had to comply. So it's not surprising that we're here 2 months later filing this lawsuit. Here's what the Attorney General said about her effort today. Let's take a listen.
This is about sports. This is also about these young women's personal safety. I've met many of these women throughout the past weeks and months, and what they have been through is horrific. We have exhausted every other remedy. We tried to get Maine to comply. We don't like standing up here and filing lawsuits. We want to get states to comply with us. That's what this is about.
Now, the state of Maine says there are only 2 transgender athletes participating in girls' sports at this time. So, look, there are legitimate questions here about whether the fact that this governor stood up to President Trump in a very public way resulted in almost the full force of the federal government being used against that state. But look, this is an issue that has played out across the country. And the Attorney General signaled today she may file lawsuits against other states.
As she should, right? As she should. So yeah, we're going to be visiting this question in the United States of America, right? And I don't think that the woke activists are going to get the outcome that they want, right? I do not think they're going to get the outcome that they're looking for. It's just going to be interesting to see what the Democrats do, right? Are Democrats going to continue to double and triple down on this, right? They're going to continue to stand behind something that is becoming more and more and more unpopular, right? I mean, out in the UK, right, their Supreme Courts are basically siding with common sense. Why is it that the Democrat Party, why can't they side with common sense, right? Why is it that Democrats refuse to stand with a vast majority of the American people on this issue? I don't get it. I'll never get it. But hey, if they want to double and triple down on it, that's fine with me, right? It just means that they're going to have a hard time winning, okay, if they continue to stand against the American people. So again, we're going to see. But shout out to the UK. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.